Kristi Noem came out over this past weekend and basically announced that she was going to be helping Donald Trump to steal the upcoming midterm elections. Kristi Noem went out there and said, quote, "Elections is another one of those critical infrastructure responsibilities that I have as well. And I would say that many people believe that it may be one of the most important things that we need to make sure we trust is reliable, and that when it gets to election day that we've been proactive to make sure that we have the right people voting, electing the right leaders to lead this country through the days that we have, knowing that people can trust it." Okay, aside from her horrific grammar that sounds like a drunk person trying to tell you something real serious, we have to have the right people voting to elect the right leaders. Now, if she had only said, we have to have the right people voting, still a bad thing to say, but obviously something that she could dismiss and be like, by the right people, I mean people that are legally here in the United States and registered to vote. Obviously, those are the right people. The wrong people are people who legally can't vote. So that one would be easy to explain. But when you add the caveat, the right people to elect the right leaders, you've just given up the game. You've just said the quiet part out loud. Because what you mean is, I'm going to weaponize the Department of Homeland Security to disenfranchise Democratic voters, something that Homeland Security has no jurisdiction over whatsoever. That is 100% the Department of Justice. But I'm going to do it anyway, claiming it's a part of my job, even though it's clearly not, so that we can get the right people in office. I know how she's going to do it. In many states, obviously, people with criminal convictions cannot vote. People who are in jail cannot vote. Kristi Noem controls ICE. ICE has been arresting, wrongfully, illegally, of course, lots of protesters, right? Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of protesters. And we know that there are calls, Steve Bannon's leading the charge, to have ICE serve as election security, putting ICE agents all around polling stations. So, you get a bunch of protesters to show up because ICE is present in and around the voting areas, including the days before. You arrest them, you keep them in jail overnight, you let them go the next day, no charges, whatever, but they can't vote when they're in jail. And obviously, anybody who's out there protesting ICE, probably not going to be voting for Republicans. So, bing, bang, boom, Homeland Security helps disenfranchise voters by literally taking them off the streets for 24 hours and then letting them go. Or, of course, detaining them even longer. Or giving them fake criminal charges and then having your goons try to threaten and intimidate them, saying, like, if you're a criminal, you can't vote. Do you have criminal charges against you? That may be illegal. They're going to use Kristi Noem and her ICE brown shirts to disenfranchise as many people as possible on bogus terms. This isn't about making sure that only legal people can vote. It's about taking legal voters away so that they can't vote for the people who are not Republican. Of course, the SAVE Act was passed by the House of Representatives last week, requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote. Guess what? That's the state's job. When you register to vote, you go in there with your ID, depending on the requirements in your area, you sign up, it goes into the state database. The state then cross-checks it because they have the technology, they have the ability. Literally takes a couple seconds per name, not a big deal. And it'll either say like, yep, this person's real, or nope, this person can't. It's super simple and easy, and it's a system that works so well that voter fraud is basically even rarer than getting struck by lightning. But Kristi Noem and Donald Trump, of course, insist that you got to have your birth certificate, something that a shockingly high number of people here in the United States do not possess. I think it's like 17 to 20% of people do not have the documentation needed to register to vote under the SAVE Act. And that's honestly not that shocking. Up until, just a few years ago, I didn't have all my information. I had to go track down this tiny ass courthouse in the state of Alabama, city of Montgomery, because that's where we lived for, about 9 months. But that's where my last name was changed legally after my mom had remarried. But without that official, stamped document from the court that took weeks to track down, cost a lot more money than you'd think for one tiny document, it was a huge pain in the butt. And most people probably don't have the time or resources or ability to do things like that. But if you don't have every single document, every step along the way of your life, whether you've had name changes, marriage, name changes, things like that, birth certificate, you're out of luck. That's what the SAVE Act does. Because this administration only wants the right people voting to elect the right leaders. And they will do everything in their power to make sure that the right people are Republicans and the right leaders are also Republicans. Anyone worried about Cuba here? I am tremendously. Now, I'm assuming you're obviously talking about the administration invading Cuba because Marco Rubio is pushing for it. And yeah, I've talked about that many times, especially in the last few weeks. I think that is starting to heat up. Rubio is definitely pushing for that to happen. And we're going to get there, unfortunately. Do you think the SAVE Act will pass the Senate? I don't know. I mean, there's rumors that some of the Republicans not exactly on board with it. I don't know that I believe that. I think it will. Republicans have always wanted this. Republicans always want to disenfranchise voters. It's a tactic they've been using for over 26 years, and they're going to continue to do it by any means necessary. The strange one says there's nothing in the Constitution that requires a voter to be a citizen. The amendment just allowed more than white males to vote. Everything else regarding voter eligibility is up to the states. Yeah, and like I said, the states have their systems in place. It's all digitized, right? So if somebody registers to vote and they're not a citizen, the system's going to flag it. So there's no need for it. And then, of course, with the whole voter ID thing, I'm totally in favor of it as long as the government starts providing free of charge IDs for every single American citizen. And for those who are unable to leave their homes to get to a DMV to go get an ID card, the government, at their own expense, has to send people to their homes to take their photo, to take their information, and create an ID card for them. So if you're going to require it, you have to provide it at your own expense. And if they want to do that, which I do think is actually not a bad idea, everybody should have an ID card, just, in general, then sure, go ahead and do voter ID because everybody will have one. And in fact, don't just give everybody one, give everybody two, right? So that we have backup. Save you a little trouble on the back end if you do that. Scientists recently discovered a new evolutionary trait in puppies, and it's that they cannot grow up and reach their full potential unless you subscribe to this channel. Don't do it for me, folks. Do it for little Atlas and Judge here. Good boys. You do good. You want to say something? No? Okay.